So that whole unleashing of creativity, it happens then. Writers strike in Hollywood, right?
Yes,
they feel
yes.
that, we are going to be out of our jobs. But this is the time when they're going to get challenged to write the next Inception.
I operate from at NASScom, 5 trillion economy. 10% of that was potentially pegged as contribution from data science and AI. Data science and AI talent penetration in the G20 countries and OECD countries, India is number one.
So bias is unconscious. So there, how do you trap bias is a huge, it requires a huge effort.
Hello friends, welcome to databicep. We are in Hyderabad today. It's home of Google, Amazon, Facebook, Pepsi and hundreds of MNCs. The second biggest, the fastest growing technology hub and arguably the future AI capital of India. Today we are going to find out the state of artificial intelligence across different sectors. For that, I have not only one but two guests. Arijit is a senior AI leader, an angel investor, and a photographer who built large data analytics and AI teams for the largest of life sciences companies in the world. We have Praveen, who is heading the AI agenda for Telangana state for nasscom, works with startups across different social sectors, focused on developing AI startup ecosystem in India. And I, Mosam, hosting in talks with leaders.
Finally, we got a chance to meet. How long we have been planning for this? A month or so?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, thanks God. It's difficult to get time from all of you, man. Okay, so let's start. So, my first question is to Arijit. Is that I was reading an article from World Economic Forum few months back, and they said that almost 85 million jobs will be lost because of artificial intelligence. And today there is almost no news which doesn't talk about AI and which doesn't talk about that what it is capable of. So I just want to understand, is it really a hype, or we are really standing on an inflection point for both the industry itself or who are participating in the industry? And I believe you are the best person because you literally have seen how an enterprise adopted AI over last 25-30 years. So what's your take in that?
Yeah, so I'll probably start with this question of, is there a hype, and how much of it is a hype versus not. I think a lot depends on what you really call a hype. Yeah, in my mind, there's a lot of expectations. So you'll see there's a lot of people who are extremely excited about it. So there's a lot of expectations of what it can do, and the realm of the possible. And then there is a lot of fear where people think that they're going to be affected and all of that. But and obviously this is a transformative technology. This is disruptive. This is transformative. And there's always that element of fear along with it. What typically happens is when there's technological intervention that makes a lot of things much easier to do, you will see that there's like a stream of creativity that gets unleashed that actually takes things to a different level altogether. So it's not like jobs are lost, but it's almost like jobs are replaced. So if you take a different example that maybe we can relate to, other layperson can relate to better, right? You take the introduction of the camera, the photographic camera, right? So you would have
The Canon example.
Yeah, I mean, Kodak was the first one, but that was in the 1860s or something, right? The first camera that came about. So you would previously have painters who are painting portraits, right? So when the camera is coming in, there's a lot of painters who are essentially feeling that we're out of job. But that is also the time when a lot of portraiture, as the initial photography was largely around portraiture and landscapes, right? And obviously a lot of people who were doing literal representations of what does a person look like or what does a place look like, right? They were impacted because a photographer would do it in no time. A camera would do it in no time, right? But however, that is also the time when a lot of new streams of art are coming about. That's when you've seen Cézanne coming up, Picasso coming up, because they are now transforming their art into something else, right? So that whole unleashing of creativity, it happens there. So now, if you've seen probably the writers' strike in Hollywood, right?
Yes,
They feel
yes.
that we are going to be out of our jobs, but this is the time when they're going to get challenged to write the next Inception.
Okay.
The script which has not been written, because at the end of the day, AI is going to get trained on stuff that has already been done and do it more efficiently. So you now have to be the person who's going to write the script for the next Inception, and not try to do something that has already been done before. So if you're creating franchises, you're probably in trouble.
Okay.
But if you're writing a script which has never been tried before, that's your area. So in my mind, it is it just unleashes a different level of creativity that we have probably not even thought before was possible.
So if I understand right, then the world needs to give birth more Christopher Nolan, right? Because I think the writers, they still understand that a lot of stories can be written by ChatGPT, can be written by Bird, right? And so what's your take in that?
So there's always this perpetual threat that seems to be there, that it's going to take away jobs, job displacements is going to happen. So from where I operate from at NASSCOM, where we see things is clearly there is a huge potential for AI, and a report that we published a couple of years ago pegged the potential from AI to India's GDP, which, let's say, if you look at 5 trillion economy, 10% of that was potentially pegged as the contribution from data science and AI. Now, we think that is a realistic possibility by the year 2026 as NASCOM. Now, in terms of jobs, obviously, the way we see it is it's going to augment what others are doing, not necessarily replace jobs, but then there's obviously a clear understanding that tools like generative AI will potentially increase productivity of individuals, and think of it like we talk of co-pilots. You're going to have a tool that is going to do all the smaller tasks which require lesser cognitive capabilities, and suddenly you have more time at hand to do much more strategic initiatives as an individual. Now, if you look at an organization setting, suddenly you have more resources at hand in order to build your own competitive moats. And that is something which I think could be of incredible value. And clearly, as a country, there is a lot of talent in terms of AI talent penetration, data science and AI talent penetration in the G20 countries and OECD countries. India is number one.
Okay.
And there is a lot of talent. And if you look at the demand side of things as well, there is a shortage. So I don't see that story where there is going to be job displacements and job losses per se, because there is so much demand. The demand has in fact tripled in India as compared to doubled in the other OECD and G20 countries. So there is a lot of demand.
Everything is digital in India right now.
Yeah.
Like, even I think on that note, I don't know whether you got that or not. Like, few days back, I got a message from Dot, and it was a broadcast message for disaster recovery team saying that they will gonna predict that whether there will be a disaster or not in your area, and that will start sending message automatically. Have you got that message?
Yeah. It was from the National Disaster Management Agency, NDMA. I got it in 2 languages, and
I got it in 3.
Somebody said that they got it on a coffee machine
Yes.
as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The connected ones.
So we are digital, like in India. But one thing you said, and then it's very interesting. We always said AI is automating the lowest rank of work, but generative AI literally changes the game completely. Don't you think it's automating a lot of work? Like what you said, the Nolan's scriptwriter may be ChatGPT next time.
Yeah. No, see, I think I don't want to look at AI, generative AI, ChatGPT, whatever you call it, as only an efficiency generator. Okay? It could be for users that we are seeing for the first time as well. And if I take examples from healthcare, one of the prime use cases of AI in healthcare is essentially in terms of diagnostics, especially in imaging. So why do you need a radiologist today to actually look at an X-ray plate and give an opinion? I mean, it will be done by by an algorithm.
Yes.
It's not that complicated, really, right? You still might need level of supervision, saying that was that right or not, right? But the basic work could still be done by an AI. But there are also examples where there's help in disease detection, for example. So one of the recent examples was of this lady whose son had a juvenile condition where the nerves actually don't grow along with the spine. So the spine keeps growing, but the nerve is not growing. So that creates a lot of tension. There's immense pain. And, in that situation, they have visited some 17 doctors or something.
Okay.
And eventually she got her diagnosis from just by entering all of those conditions on ChatGPT. Because what was happening was, there's a reason for it, right? Because what was happening was, when they go to one physician, so first, let's say they go to they go to a neurologist, right, and they have only talked about a certain pain, right. However, there are other conditions. So, for example, a bit of a temporary paralysis in the legs, for example, right, for which they have gone to probably an orthopedic, and they have not mentioned the pain that's there in the neck. Right.
Okay.
So there's no correlation of the various visits that they are doing, and all of the physicians are only looking at isolated examples, and it's only at a moment of frustration when she is looking at like what the hell happened, going through all of those use cases and actually putting it out. And she did it actually on ChatGPT. And
ChatGPT means, are we using figuratively or it
no,
was ChatGPT?
No, it was. She used the ChatGPT app to actually put in all of the details of the conditions and the doctor visits. And the response that came around was to check for that specific disease that she was, and that was ultimately the diagnosis. Now, it's not about the inefficiency of the doctor or anything. It's just the lack of availability of data across, right? But see, this is one example where it is not about efficiency. It is something that has never been done before.
Okay.
Right? On the other hand, the imaging examples are stuff that have been done before. They can be automated and they can be done much more efficiently, right? So there are efficiency use cases also, but then there are transformative use cases also. And in my mind, you can't miss one or the other, because but efficiency is going to just free up your resources, and then you have stuff.
But a funny thing, I possibly use this as an anecdote. Have you heard a company named Babylon AI?
I have.
It was supposed to be the flag bearer of AI in healthcare and which can predict diseases, but recently it closed its operation in US. So, and then that was a conversation we were having, that is it investing too much in AI is a problem. So what do you think? Like, where is the right balance? Like that, hey, we understand something new that's coming in versus we don't get completely caught up in the act or in the hype, but we still focus on where the business is going.
So I have a thought on what Arijit you shared, and just taking the same example of healthcare, right? If you look at the doctor-patient ratio in India, it's really huge as compared to some of the more evolved countries. Now, AI and the radiologist example that he's talked about, or there could be various other diagnostic metrics that doctors are looking at in order to take a decision, in order to arrive at a diagnosis. Those can clearly have a very strong use case and application of AI, which frees up their time, because you are using the specialists to attend to patients and improve the quality of patient experience.
Exactly.
As against looking at what you need to do, review some diagnostic tests. That is all outsourced to AI. The way I look at it, and that is huge impact, especially for countries like India, where we have that skew in terms of that ratio that I talked about.
And in fact, it's everywhere. Okay? It's not just in India. I mean, even if you look at the US, right? If you go to a physician's office, a huge part of their time actually goes into entering data into the MREHR systems. Right? And even if there's a simple, either a voice assistant, or even imagine if there's an AI system which actually listens to the patient physician conversation and essentially buckets all of that conversation into what are the complaints, what are the diagnosis, what prescription, blah, 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 right? And that itself becomes like an editable input for the physician to just take it into the MR. Just review it and you're done. So it's, in a lot of cases, physicians do it themselves. In a lot of cases, they have office attendants who actually take notes and put it into the system, right? All of that could potentially be done by this thing. So it's not just about the about India, where resources are scarce, even where
Okay.
you are actually, you have abundant resources.
But expensive.
Yeah, it's of course it's expensive and abundant. You actually have a much cheaper option to get stuff done.
So I have a point there to add. So while we are still talking about the kind of impact, the kind of value for business or impact for society, it's important to understand the guardrails that are necessary
Right.
while all of this is being enabled. Now, there is obviously a huge element of privacy, data privacy, and at least in India, there is the bill that is now a law on data protection, data privacy. It's important to have those considerations in place while these solutions are being developed. Because at the end of the day, the data is of that individual, and he or she has to give consent for that recording to happen, or for that data capture to be processed in the manner that is training these models. Again, this becomes even more significant if you look at use cases that are talking about issuing credit. And is there any discrimination that models are creating on issuance of credit? There have been several such use cases, even in the context of judiciary in law enforcement, wherein there have been inherent biases even by human beings as acting as judges, where they have their own biases sort of causing somebody to get convicted for a crime more often than somebody else of a different race. And it's very clear that those judgments are being used as a way to train models and to aid judges. Then it's a virtuous vicious cycle in many ways, right? So we got to be mindful of that and how these guardrails have to be shaped.
But that's the real
ethical
reason.
considerations. You should make a separate topic altogether.
Definitely.
There's privacy. There's bias. There's a question of bias. So you have an SpO2 meter on your watch.
Yes, I do.
Try what percentage you're getting right now.
I'm not wearing it
What
right
do you
now,
get?
but typically I
95,
get around
96?
94, 95, 96.
Why do you get 94, 95 and everybody in India gets 95, 96? You never get 98, 99. You know why?
Why?
Because these models are actually, so the way this measures it is basically the blood flow under your skin. It looks at the color to look at the oxygen saturation. Yeah. And it gets fooled by the color of our skin, of brown skin, because this is all trained on
White screen.
Caucasians, or a majority of Caucasians. Right?
Yeah.
So it always comes to 95.
Oh, bad.
And it's right there.
So then the question is that how much is too much? Like especially like if someone is trying to bring a product out in the market, or someone is trying to build an organizations around AI, like where do they stop right now? I'm not talking about let's predict a future for 20 years, but let's for next
From ethical standpoint?
from all standpoint, from business standpoint, from adoption standpoint, from ethical standpoint, where do someone stop?
I don't know. I mean, because I don't think we have even started. So I really don't know where we stop. But see, the ethical considerations, obviously, there cannot be a way to bypass it. And the bias part of it is something that you just can't get away from. And it's the riskiest part of it, because the thing with bias is that all bias is unconscious bias.
Okay.
If you are conscious that there's a bias, and in spite of that, if you're behaving in a certain way that is biased, it's not bias anymore. It's just bad intent.
Okay.
It's just bad intent.
Okay.
Yeah? So bias is unconscious. So how do you trap bias is it requires a huge effort. It requires a huge effort of actually going into the depths, peeling the onion to its core, and then figuring out why the hell it's happening that way. Right?
Okay.
So that's, for me, that is the riskiest part compared to everything else. Privacy is easier to solve for, because it's sort of out there in the open, and then you have to take a call like, I have to ask.
And regulations are there to guide.
Regulations are there as well, right? But bias is the biggest challenge that you have out there, because we're not conscious of it.
And I think that can be potentially addressed. Not that it's easy. I agree with what you're saying, but you need to have representation, a suitable representation of who is going to contribute to which part of the model building. Now, one is gender, right? So clearly, as a society, if we are, let's say, 50-50 in terms of the male and female genders, of course, consciously you got to be looking at whatever that composition is that represented in the various stages of that journey, of that model building, or of the data that is being used. Now, these are simple efforts that need to be taken up. And I agree with you. We still, in many cases, we are still at that early stage. Okay. And I think it's good to already start addressing the issue from the bias standpoint and see whether that is being taken care of, and then the rest of the aspects of the journey will eventually have or at least a role to play for that organization. But if you are able to get this piece right and are conscious about the next stages, then I think you're in a good place to begin with.
I agree that, but right now I'm in a place where I need to get some food, man. Like it's early in the morning, and when we are sitting here, it's DMD's the second outlet in Gachibowli area. They serve amazing sizzlers and a very authentic Hyderabadi and Kolkata biryani. But right now it's morning. We can't have biryani in the morning. So can we get some tea, a coffee?
Yeah, I'd like to have some tea.
Subscribe to Data Bicep to continue watching.
Hope you like the video. We will continue to discuss different works that startups are doing.
Forest department, with the hope that we will use AI to solve a use case. Do an open innovation challenge, call startups from around the country to solve this problem.
Can AI catch Pushpa?
I'm sure. Those that are looking at the usage of robotics, AI-powered robotics, in order to clean up the lakes.
It's a fantastic example of computer vision put to practice. Right?
Then again, in the context of reproductive health, mental illness, a lot of different startups that are working in that space. Because
sometime back, I was working with a concept of mental health, and they were primarily in suicide prevention.